Joining us now to analyze the coverage of the Mueller report and the leak to the New York Times about his prosecutors being frustrated and unhappy, Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist and a Fox News contributor. Jillian Turner, Fox News correspondent here in Washington. And Mo Alithi, a former Democratic official and Fox News contributor who runs Georgetown University's Institute of Politics. Molly, just as I asked Rudy Giuliani, journalists say that Mueller has run a pretty tight ship throughout this two-year investigation. Suddenly, clearly, there are leakers who are basically saying, hey, we've got a lot of bad stuff on Donald Trump, and Barr's letter didn't reflect that.
Right. Well, first off, I do agree that the lack of leaking was a false story. We knew what was going on with the special counsel, including that it was really about obstruction of justice as opposed to Russia, because they were talking to reporters.
Sometimes
and there was even
it's
evidence.
defense lawyers who talk to reporters.
Sure,
Yeah.
but I think that's just an overblown statement that they weren't leaking. What's interesting here, and I thought in the second paragraph of that New York Times story, you have these Mueller affiliates saying they're upset that they didn't get to set the narrative. The fact that they think setting the narrative is an important part of their role, I think, is something that should be looked at more critically and is not just sort of a dispassionate law enforcement angle. They wanted to smear the president, essentially, with what they'd found in their report. And I think that is a very interesting thing and worthy of coverage. And I think these media reports actually do show that story pretty well.
Jillian, as I mentioned, William Barr's circle is leaking too, saying he didn't like being put in the position of having to make a prosecutorial call on part of this. So I think it's true that prosecutors are frustrated. They think the Barr summary has framed the media debate, and the more time goes on, the more that could be set in stone. So they're using the press to fight back.
If we're going to base this story solely on reporting, then we have to accept the fact that two things can be true at one time. Maybe they are, maybe they're not in this case, but within hours of that New York Times story going to print the other day, Fox News' own justice team got new reporting of their own from Justice Department officials affiliated with Mueller's team pushing back against the specifics, the particular allegations in that story. They said it's not true that many people who worked for Mueller, or that even some people who worked for Mueller, are unhappy with the report and how Barr chose, what he chose to highlight, what he chose to share. That's not true. The team is largely happy. So two conflicting sources of reporting here. This is how journalism works, right? It doesn't mean that anybody, one report doesn't negate the other. We just have to be able to hold two things in our minds at once.
The president, Mo, tweeting again about the New York Times and media coverage being unfair. But let's put up on the screen one from the other day, in which he says the New York Times had no legitimate sources, which would be totally legal, concerning the Mueller report. In fact, they probably had no sources at all. They were a fake newspaper who have already been forced to apologize for their incorrect and very bad reporting on me. The Times actually has not apologized to President Trump, but did express some regret on how it covered the 2016 election. This is something the president often does. He questions whether unnamed sources even exist.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a tweet maybe this morning or yesterday in which he attacks the leaks from Mueller's shop while at the same time attacking the media for manufacturing sources. So, I mean, there's a little of disconnect there. Look, I am tired of having a conversation about a report that no one has seen yet. I am tired of the Justice Department and the president declaring victory when no one has had a chance to read it yet. I am tired
including the White House.
Including the White House. I am tired of people who are asserting that there's more in there than Barr is saying, who haven't read it yet. I am tired of this whole conversation. I want to see the report. And, the president has not been let off the hook in my mind until I've read the report.
Well, that's fair. None of us
we haven't seen it yet, but let us see it.
Molly, you say that Mueller's prosecutor should not be in the business of worrying about framing a media narrative, but isn't Barr and the Justice Department doing the same thing? It wasn't inevitable once they decided to do the summary that might frame a narrative that might be more helpful to President Trump?
Well, no, unless you think that they were wrong when they said that there were no indictments coming out of the end of the probe.
Obviously, that must be true.
And I agree. I want to see everything that's in this report as well. But we do know that it ended without a single American, much less a single American close to the Trump campaign, being indicted for treasonous collusion with Russia. And this is why those anonymous sources are so important. For many years, we've had anonymous sources alleging that they had great deals of evidence. They would selectively leak certain types of information. And they created this story that there were all these bombshells and that we were going to have the president indicted for collusion with Russia. That's why those anonymous sources are so bad. And that's why the media need to be much more careful about just receiving these leaks without being more critical of them.
I think that's a fair point. Very quick point.
The White House a little bit is trying to have its cake and eat it too in this instance. They're trying to say because Mueller found no evidence of collusion, the whole thing, the whole investigation was illegitimate. But if they had found collusion, they would have been saying the entire thing was illegitimate.
All right.
Former House Oversight Chairman, Committee Chairman, and Fox News contributor Trey Gowdy, good evening to you, sir. Good to see you this evening.
Yes, ma'am.
So what was your reaction to that? I mean, that's an ugly exchange. It's not the kind of thing that you see often on Capitol Hill. What do you think?
Well, the process is unprecedented. We had a lot of bad days the 8 years I was there. We never had a day where we all asked a chairman to step down. The substance is what really caught my attention, Martha. There's only one campaign that took negative information from Russia. There's only one campaign that actually paid for that information. Remember in the Barr letter, the summary that Barr sent, despite multiple opportunities, no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. And yet Fusion GPS and the Clinton campaign was actually spending money to dig up Russian dirt on Trump. And for Adam I've never heard him address that. I've heard him talk about the Trump Tower meeting where nothing happened, but I've never, in fact, he went to court to keep us from finding out about Fusion GPS. So I think he'd be taken a little bit more seriously if every once in a while he acknowledged the only campaign that took information from Russia was the campaign he supported.
All right, so now to the report itself, which we're learning is over 300 pages. There's all kinds of estimates, but it's a lengthy report. When you look at other reports, the Starr report, it's sort of in line with what we have seen in the past, though. But a lot's being made of the size of this document. What do you think?
Honestly, I thought it was kind of short. The report.
Yeah, so did I. 2 years, 300 pages.
I mean, I'm reading Crime and Punishment right now. I wish it were only 300 pages. It's like 1,000 pages. I thought, given the amount of time, the witnesses they interviewed, the search warrants, the subpoenas, I expected something longer. Perhaps the collusion section is not that long, and then the what Russia did to us as a country is longer, but I expected it to be longer.
And what about the release of the report? 'Cause, you know, Jerome Nadler asked for it, the chairman of the committee. He wanted it by April 2nd. He said that was a hard deadline. He had, I guess, about a 10-minute conversation with the Attorney General, Bill Barr, who said it may take longer than that. What about the time frame?
Yeah, I actually, Mueller and Barr, what the Democrats are asking Mueller and Barr to do is actually to break the law. They cannot disseminate grand jury material. They cannot disseminate classified information. Imagine how much sources and methods and otherwise classified information is in the Mueller report. If he did a good job, and I suspect he did, it is chock full of classified information. So you got to scrub it. You got to scrub the grand jury material. I'm in a really small group of people that actually doesn't think the report should be made public, because the Department of Justice is a true false agency. You either indict or you do not indict. But you don't do Oppo research and then turn it over to someone like Adam Schiff, which is all he wants. He just wants any kernel of negative information about President Trump so he can use it in 2020.
So you have talked about the fact that you would like to see some investigation, and there are ongoing investigations into what happened on the other side of the equation, how this whole thing got started, how they had the FISA applications go through. Here is an exchange between you and the former CIA director, John Brennan, back in May of 2017 with regard to the Steele dossier. Watch.
Do you know whether any of the underlying allegations made in the Steele dossier were ever tested, probed, examined, cross-examined?
There were efforts made by the Bureau to try to understand whether or not any of the information in that was valid, but I don't have any firsthand knowledge of it.
Do you know if the Bureau ever relied on the Steele dossier as part of any court filings?
I have no awareness.
Looking back at that now, and also in light of John Brennan's voluminous statements that he was sure that there were indictments coming down. He said that as late as March 8th, and now he says that maybe he got bad information. What do you think?
Maybe. Maybe he put out bad information. Maybe he's the reason that the dossier was included in the intelligence community's assessment in late 2016, early 2017, that was ultimately leaked and spawned this. I mean, I had to be cryptic there because it was not publicly known that there was a FISA. Now the whole world knows there was a FISA, and what the whole world, I hope, will someday learn is the FBI had made no efforts to corroborate or vet the information even as late as December of 2017, well after it had been used in the FISA, and the FBI still had made no effort. So, Brennan's animosity towards the president is so manifest. So is Comey's right now. But to think that this guy was running an intelligence agency with the amount of animus he has towards President Trump is sobering.
Judge Napolitano was on earlier today, and he said this. Let's play it, and I'll get a quick response for you, and then we got to go.
I think that Congressman Schiff is correct. In that report will be evidence of the existence of a conspiracy. In that report will be evidence of obstruction of justice, interfering with an FBI investigation for a personal gain, but not enough evidence to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
You agree with that?
I don't know, and I hope Judge Napolitano also said, and the reason that law enforcement agencies don't release reports is for that very reason. If you're not going to charge them, I mean, imagine if every law enforcement agency said, look, we didn't have enough information to charge you, but we're going to go disseminate all the negative stuff we learned. We don't do that in this country. You're presumed innocent. If you want to remove that presumption of innocence, take them to court. Don't release a report.
Trey Gowdy, thank you very much, sir. Good to see you tonight.